So for my chancellor's not here, so we're not gonna skip the chancellor's conversation part. The chairperson's report, I just have two things to note. Again, I can just say this in less than a minute. Today is a full packed agenda. I hope that we will be able to conclude by 5:30. I also recognize that the end of the year celebration and retirement party organized primarily by the Faculty Association and Friends are gonna start essentially at 4 o'clock. So I do want to recognize the fact that some of you might need to go, so we do need to have get through the agenda as much as possible so that we can hopefully get there. Some of you could get there around 5 p.m. So thank you in advance for helping me move the agenda along. The second thing I want to note is that May 19th in 2 weeks is our last scheduled PGC meeting for the semester. We do have a very packed agenda. Again, the agenda review work group discussed this on Tuesday, and we're going to keep folks updated so that we can at least get through the agenda items. At this point, we have at least 8 items, and a 3-hour meeting in 2 weeks is going to be very tight. But I just want to give a heads up that we might extend it to a 4-hour meeting just to get through some of those items. We might. I just don't want to surprise anybody. But I just want to give the folks a heads up that we might need to do that. And if we were to do that, can I get a sense from the council if you prefer to do that from 1:30 to 5:30 or from 2:30 to 6:30? If we extend the PGC meeting by another hour. Okay, so there's a sense, start at 1:30, go to 5:30. I know that works for the classified staff as well.
I think it's important to need to know what it is we're trying to get done that day. I had some questions, so while we're on the topic and everybody isn't cutting anyone off, it would be very nice to know what it is that we need to complete this year, because the list, whether it's the Chapter 6 VPs and APs, and Steve, you and I, we can touch base at the break, whether AP 2.07 was sent off into the Chancellor's hands, and I don't really know what's going to happen with that, and we have one more meeting and we didn't finish, and I don't know how we plan on doing that. We also have what I understand to be a super substantial budget presentation, and I'm anticipating that the very important and long-awaited critical connection to that enrollment management plan is also up for a second read at that meeting. And so, and I don't even know if that's everything.
Yeah, so let me just give folks a sense of the items in 2 weeks. Again, these are all very important. The 2016-17 budget that Lynn just alluded to. The 5-year capital outlay plan. Again, that needs to be submitted to the State Chancellor's Office by June 30th. The third item is the tech plan, the second reading. The fourth item is the equal opportunity and equal employment opportunity plan, second reading. Enrollment management plan, second reading, so that's 5 already. Decision-making flowcharts, if that is something that needs to go to the PGC in 2 weeks, that is again to be determined. And then the accreditation self-evaluation report, again, that is something that I need to confer as well, because it's coming to the PGC as informational item only. And going back to Lillian's point in terms of the Chapter 6, instructional related VPs and APs, so that needs to be discussed. As well as the 2.07 VP AP 2.07. So we do have a long list, and I just wanted to give the council a heads up that we need to somehow decide very soon how we want to proceed, again, with regard to meeting date and time. Steve?
I just had a thought. Obviously, PGC may think this is a good idea, but I heard a number of these plans have a first and second reading. I mean, if it's possible to read through that plan today and deal with it, and not need to bring it back automatically for a second reading. If you're satisfied with it, perhaps you can move forward. But that's just a thought.
Karen?
I actually think that the plans can be done more swiftly in 2 readings, because then the first reading you don't have to try and thrash everything out at the meeting. You can say, okay, here are the issues that need to be identified, bring it back. unless something comes to us that's like, it's quite, nothing needs to be touched, but that doesn't happen.
Yeah. And again, I just want to thank the council in advance for recognizing that we have a lot of things we need to get through, and recognizing that again in 2 weeks it is our last scheduled PGC meeting for this semester. So I see quorum, so at this point I'd like to go back to the top of the agenda, which is to approve today's agenda. I have a couple of comments. So because of the end of the year celebration and retirement party, and because the budget presentation is scheduled to be last, it makes sense to move Ron Gearhart's budget presentation up so that he will be here and you will be here to participate in that discussion. So I'd like to propose that we move that right before unfinished business. So that's one request. And because Ron is also here, and because the IEPI section has some budget implication, I'm asking if the council will be okay as well to move the IEPI discussion right after Ron's budget discussion, so it'll be right back to back. And the other thing that I want to take ownership for is we did not note the comprehensive annual program review on the planning committee piece, so that should have been noted as well. So if it's okay with the committee, we could add that, or if not, then I'd certainly like to keep it. I'd like to get your thoughts.
Do you want to add program review to this meeting? Is that what you said?
It's not noted here, so
It's not agendized?
it has not been agendized. So so Pam's going to talk about it, but if it's not noted here, the question to the council is there's no 72-hour notice, so technically, how do we want to do that?
So at this point, Pam's giving a report from the planning committee. She can discuss whatever she wants in her report. I don't see what we're trying to agendize, because we have an action item on this.
That's what I'm trying to do.
So this point is part of her report. I just want to note it for the agenda. That's my opinion. That's where I'm coming from. So if it's okay with the committee, can we move the IEPI piece to right after the budget? So that the budget would be right back to back. So that's all I have for the agenda. Are there other thoughts, questions, comments, changes? Yes. Oh, and I'm sorry, and also AP 5.12, we do need to table that as well.
I got off the phone with the student trustee and a few student leaders, and they had a scheduling conflict, and they just wanted me to let you all know that they plan on coming, not today, and they'd ask respectfully if you could hold off on issues related to students. And I said, well, I don't know that you have the authority to do that, but I said that I would ask in public comment on their behalf and let you know that they aren't planning on attending, but they do plan on attending the next meeting.
So at this point, what you're saying, just to double check, we're not going to take up the AP 5.12 and BP 1.015?
That's not my decision. I'm just telling you what they said.
But that's the
May I ask a question to VC Santos? What is the scheduling conflict?
So in between, the election has been moved twice. Non-credit finals and credit finals were sandwiched in between the meeting times. So it's just been sort of crossing of wires and schedules. We weren't anticipating moving the student election a few weeks back, and so it's just been a really busy time for them. So
so some of this, to clarify so I understand what the scheduling conflict is, some of the student members of the council are their conflict is they need to take final exams, and then there are other members of the council that are on the student election committee, or I'm not understanding, because I have an election that's open right now online. It closes at 5. So could you clarify about the conflict with the election?
Sure. So I don't want to speak for them, but when I asked them why they weren't attending, they said, we've had a lot going on. Non-credit finals happened and are happening this last week and this week. Credit finals are coming up. Our elections have been moved a few times. We have been meeting weekly as an executive council. I can't, and a few of us can't make it today. We plan on attending the next 2 meetings, though. So that's just what they said.
Thank you for providing that information.
Sure.
So just to going back to the agenda. So again, we're going to move Ron's budget presentation up to before unfinished business, and we're going to also move the IPI one just because it's budget and budget. We're going to table AP 5.12 because we do not have students here.
We have motion that we put AP 5.12 above the presentations and we just deal with tabling it as a committee.
Okay. All right, sure.
Take care of that the agenda now, and then we can do the presentation.
Oh, sure, that's fine. Okay, thank you. So, other comments about the agenda?
I'm sorry, did you comment on 1.015?
No, we're gonna
Okay.
we're gonna take
You're gonna talk about
we're gonna
it.
talk about it when we get to it.
Also dealing with student issues.
So
Right.
can I get
I knew whatever it is. I
Thank
second
you.
whatever it is.
Figure it out.
so thank you.
Yeah.
Motion by Lillian, seconded by Joe to amend the agenda as I noted to move Ron's presentation up and the IEPI item up. Thank you. Moving on to approval of the April 21st minutes. I hope you had a chance to take a look at it. I know that the agenda review work group provided some good feedback on Tuesday. We got a motion to approve the April 21st minutes.
Make a motion to approve the minutes.
Okay, motion by Chief Barnes, seconded by Elizabeth. Any other discussion? All in favor of approving the April 21st minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstention? Okay. One abstention. Denise was not present. Thank you very much. Motion passed. So we're going to go to awards and recognitions. Any awards and recognitions council members would like to acknowledge? Okay, carrying on. Thank you very much. We're going to move now to Ron's budget presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Do I need this? Hello? Okay, we're good. Thank you for moving me up, appreciate it. Kind of our ongoing discussion dialogue regarding budget. The three items that I wanted to cover in I think my 25 or so minutes is where we're at with regard to the 16-17 budget development, both in terms of in terms of timeline, where we're at with regard to putting the budget document together, and then also some updates, Sacramento updates on where we're at. Also to kind of continue the discussion and sharing of information related to the comparison survey that we started last PGC meeting, and then finishing time willing, kind of beginning the dialogue or discussion with regard to FTEF budgets for 16-17. So jumping ahead, where we're at, the governor's May revise is expected to be released within the next week or so. He doesn't give us an exact date yet that I'm aware of, but it will be next week. And just kind of recall back to our, our process in the administrative procedure on budget development. At that point in time, based upon whatever the governor includes in his May revision, we will go back and update the budget assumptions, 16-17 budget assumptions that we first discussed or looked at in January, and I believe in February, and revise that. One thing, kind of jumping ahead, one thing that we're already hearing about is a change in COLA, statewide COLA. So in the governor's January budget proposal, and just for perhaps for sake of recollection, here was the 16-17 budget development assumptions that we had at the time. One of the revenue assumptions in here was an assumption based upon COLA, right here. 0.47, you may recall. Earlier this week, we received news from the state that they're anticipating the governor's May revision to lower downwards the statewide COLA. Now, COLA is a calculation, cost of living adjustment is a calculation by the federal agency. It's based upon the implicit price deflator. And it's very formulaic, but ultimately, because of the variables that go into that calculation, we've been told that COLA is essentially going to go down to 0 from 0.47. So the potential magnitude or impact of that is about $750,000 that we had put into the budget assumptions previously. Right now, we're not necessarily, I mean, that's really the only thing of material thing that we're kind of hearing right now ahead of or in preparation for the release of the May revision, but you know, surely there's going to be other components or other things within there that will impact us. That again, we'll have to go back and revise that budget assumption document. The budget development calendar, may recall from that document too, we reviewed a few times. The next or the the next date in terms of upcoming event is the next meeting is Jesse discussed. At the May 19th meeting, we're scheduled or set to review the tentative budget. Thank you to everybody who entered in their budget within Web 4 and part of the budget development process. Much appreciated. So right now we're business or the budget office is hard at work basically compiling all that information and rolling it up into the budget document itself that you'll see at the next PGC meeting. Also in the budget development calendar, I believe in the February version after discussion at our January meeting, or one of our January meetings, we had discussed putting on the calendar itself budget forums. And so we've tentatively scheduled 2 on the budget calendar itself. We had it during the entire week, but we narrowed down the tentative dates and kind of wanted to get some feedback if anyone had any input to offer on the 2 dates that we've tentatively put together. The first one being May 20th, which is a Friday at the Mission Center. And that came from really student development asking for one of the forums to occur outside of Ocean at one of the centers to get a broader reach. And then we're still working to schedule the room and the time of that. And then the last one, the second of the 2, being here at Ocean on Monday, May 23rd. And here, this room from 3:30 to 5. So if you think of anything in terms of input or anything related to that, please either say, grab me aside or email me. But those are the 2 tentatively scheduled forums. We are hoping to get out the announcement on all the emails and listservs of the forums either tomorrow or Monday. So if you have any feedback, please let me know as soon as possible. So jumping into a kind of a continuation of sharing of information on the comparison survey that we looked at our last meeting. So at our last meeting, we agreed upon a comparison group of other districts to do a fiscal comparison based upon a number of criteria: size, FTES, structure, really looking at size of non-credit programs, credit programs, and this was the group. With one change. You see the comparison group, we added San Diego, remember? We had taken off, I believe it was El Camino. In place of El Camino, we put San Diego. I'm seeing some nodding heads, so I take it you remember. Okay. So this is one of the slides that we had looked at last time in terms of that comparison group. We've updated it, obviously, to include San Diego there at the bottom. But again, this isn't necessarily new information with the exception of San Diego, but this is looking at the the total general fund, which includes unrestricted general fund dollars as well as restricted general fund dollars, and it largely includes, in terms of the restricted side, the state categorical programs. So again, the first column there to the left is the district. Total FTES, that includes non-resident. The column right to the right of that is resident students. And then the non-resident, so resident plus non-resident equals total. Structure in terms of whether it's a single college district or a multi-college district. The size of the non-credit programs, and as we talked about or shared with you last time, we have the second largest non-credit program in the state, behind that of San Diego. Ours used to be quite a bit higher. So for example, in our base year, if we're going to look in base in terms of 12-13 for stability funding, our FTES in that 12-13 was about 9,700 FTES. And actually that's quite a bit down from what it had been the previous 12 years, where it ranged generally between 13,000 and 11,000 FTES. It went through some fluctuations, but just kind of, I say that in terms of saying where our non-credit program used to be significantly larger than the second largest in the state, being that of San Diego. San Diego at about 85, 8,600 was relatively the same. Total general fund revenues, again, this includes unrestricted general fund as well as the categorical programs. Ending fund balance, again, including both sub-funds, but the general fund, and then ending fund balance is percent of expenditures. And then the column furthest to the right being the size of in terms of dollars, size of the categorical programs, the state categorical programs, which oftentimes makes up the lion's share of the restricted general fund. Put that in there just to provide some context of, okay, when we're talking total general fund, how much is really categorical programs and restricted funding? It also gives a sense of the size of those programs with regard to servicing their students who fit those student populations who are eligible for EOPS, DSPS, CARE, TANF, CalWORKS, foster youth, all those restricted programs in the eyes of the state in funding. So carrying that forward, what we do here, and this is a new slide, is that we've pared this down so it only includes our U fund, our unrestricted general fund. And so again, looking at it, the district is to the far left. This is for at the bottom it says source 14-15-311A reports. So this shows the beginning fund balance. So this was the fund balance for that district as of July 1st, 2014. Total U fund or unrestricted general fund revenues, total general fund expenditures, difference between the two. Transfers in or out. Negative or in brackets means it's a net transfer out. And then ending fund balance as of the end of the fiscal year, which in this case, June 30, 2015. And then ending fund balance as a percentage of expenditures, which is how the state calculates it. And at the very bottom, we provide statewide averages, or totals and then averages for the ending fund balance. So for example, looking at us, we're about the middle of the table, San Francisco. Our beginning fund balance as of the beginning of the year, July 1, 2014, was approximately $25.5 million. We had recorded revenue of $182.4 million. Of that, we spent $170.5 million. We had revenues in excess of expenditures of approximately $11.9 million. We had transfers out, which was largely related to our self-insurance programs and funding those, as well as the transfers to the OPEB trust, other post-employment benefits trust, and then an ending fund balance, approximately rounding up $8 million. So as a percentage of expenditures, that's approximately 19.8%. So let's just jump down to San Diego to compare it to. So looking at theirs, they're kind of the same, right? They had 13.4 rounding up million beginning fund balance, you see their revenues and expenditures. They had a slight, relatively slight operating deficit of about 1.1 million. They had transfers out, and then that reduced their ending fund balance. Basically, in the eyes of someone looking at them outside, they had basically a deficit for that year of approximately 4.7, almost 4.8 million dollars, reducing their fund balance from 13.4 down to approximately 8.6. And you see the other, follows form. I'll pause here. Okay. Looking at statewide, and in terms of unrestricted general fund, the state had a beginning fund balance, all 72 districts aggregated together, of about $1.1 billion. Revenues, general fund revenues was about $6.75 billion. Expenditures of $6.5 billion. Had other transfers out of approximately $250 million. Ending fund balance of about $1.1 billion. So statewide average across the system in terms of fund balance as a percentage of expenditures, 17.3%. So then getting into revenues, FTS revenues, fund balance. This is essentially taking components of the slides two prior and looking at it in terms of and starting a process to slice that and look at it what the type of expenditure is. Academic salaries, classified salaries. I'm going to just kind of cover this in general because we go into more depth in a slide here in a second. But just to kind of give you a preview and walk through it, is taking those numbers and comparing it upon a common denominator, which is students, in this case FTES. And so getting to the question that I've received a few times, how are we spending our money in comparison with other districts? Well, we're looking at it through this lens in two perspectives. Number one, we're looking at it from a perspective of aggregate spend in terms of dollars. That's helpful and perhaps insightful, but I think more meaningful is, okay, in comparison to some measure of students that district is serving, which the common measure we have is in terms of what the state looks at is FTES. So I'm going to skip over this, but some of the data is in more detail on a subsequent slide, but I'll pause for Karen's
Before you
question.
skip this one, when you're talking about the salaries here, the money figures here, is that just what's being spent out of U funds?
Correct. No. This is U fund and restricted fund. So this is unrestricted. This is general fund, but U fund plus our categorical programs and restricted
So in
fund.
understanding the whole picture, though, our district has, in addition to U fund and categorical funds, it has parcel tax and sales tax, or parcel tax and sales tax. So these other districts they don't have that.
Correct.
So for instance, when you're looking at the percentage of the budget that's spent for academic salaries, if we're doing all of our academic salaries out of the U fund and restricted funds, right? Whereas those other districts also have to do their administrative salaries out of the U funds and restricted funds, then it's a little kind of different.
I'm not sure I understand the comment on the administrative, but one clarification on what you said though is that the sales tax is in the U fund, so the sales tax is part of this.
Okay, but the parcel tax.
Parcel tax is not, because it's a special revenue fund. It's in a separate fund type other than a restricted, other than a general fund.
Okay.
So, but sales tax is in. Alan, Lily?
Was Alan's hand up first? Well, can you tell me the significance of the last two categories where it has academic salaries, total FTES? Is that saying that our academic salaries, can you just fit that in?
So yeah, let me walk through this, but again, we go into greater depth, a little bit greater depth on a subsequent slide. If I could, but I'll touch it now since you asked. So the first 5 columns are the same columns that were in a previous slide, right? The only 3 columns, the only new data on this slide are the last columns to the right. that being academic salaries, and I guess I should put a money sign there so it denotes it's in dollars, and then dividing that number by total FTES. So for example, for us, in fiscal year 2014-15, we had spent $87,099,918 on academic salaries. Now that's everything under the criteria in terms of the eyes of the state of academic salaries. So that's full-time, that's part-time, that's instructional, non-instructional, there's even the academic administrators are in there. So that's anything academic in the eyes of the state, right? So what we do, or what we've done, is taken that number and first said, okay, based upon the state's identified workload measure, in terms of students, FTES, dividing that number by total FTES, the 25,011. On that measure, we're spending $3,482.46 per total FTES. Well, being mindful that the state funds resident, non-resident, so we collect revenue that's in the general fund, as I'm reminded, for non-residents. So what we also then being mindful is, okay, well, understanding that, and understanding that in theory the non-residents are supposed, in theory, how the state does the formula that we do every February. The non-residents pay what essentially the state plus the residents are paying themselves through a higher per unit fee. It's the theory behind it. So kind of thinking about it from that perspective is, okay, well, that just using total FTES may skew the data in terms of larger revenues, right? Larger revenues and not necessarily equally or proportionate increase in expenses for those non-resident students. If that makes sense. So what we then try to do is say, okay, well, kind of adjusting for that or being cognizant of that, and being that this is unrestricted or restricted and unrestricted general fund, we take that number, that dollar number, $87,099,918, and divide it by just the resident students. And that then we come to $3,676.81. Again, the reason why that is insightful is that, especially looking at districts that have a large non-resident international program, their numbers change quite a bit. So obviously one of the largest one of the largest is Santa Monica, although we do show that, the 4,625 FTS from their international program. You kind of see what that does in comparing those per FTES dollars, the two columns to the farthest to the right, for that district. I mean, it's pretty significant. It's about a $650 per FTES swing. Other colleges, other districts that do not have such a large non-resident international program don't have that sizable of a change between the two. So from that perspective or that lens, we show both.
I just want to, before I go to Lynn, I just want to note that we have spent 20 minutes on this item, so I just want to keep us on
We have
track.
5 or 10 more minutes.
We have about 10 more minutes.
Okay.
So I just want to do that, not to rush the conversation.
So because we're looking at, so essentially that number is our cost per student. Cost per one full-time student in just academic
Just academic stuff.
courses. But the source is 2014-2015 when we have an artificially low productivity rate. And
I think I know where you go. Can we talk about that on the slide that has this more fleshed out?
thank you.
Okay. So this is that slide. So what this does is, again, taking the entire general fund, splitting it down by all the major categories or major expenditure classifications. So for example, again, academic salaries, object code, we call it account code. In the state's vernacular, it's object code. 1,000 academic salaries, 2,000 classified salaries, 3,000 employee benefits, 4,000 and 5,000, which the state lumps together in terms of operational expenses, and then a summary, expenditures excludes CO, which stands for capital outlay. And then the column furthest to the right includes capital outlay. So that's all general fund expenditures. And again, these are aggregate dollar amounts. These aren't, so it's helpful, it's insightful to look at. So again, looking at it, we spent approximately $87.1 million in academic salaries, approximately $34 million classified salaries, employee benefits $46 million, 4,000 and 5,000 supplies and services, spent approximately $24.4 million. And so the total of that is approximately $191.7 million. And then you threw capital outlay in there, our 6,000 account code, we're at about $193.6 million. So we're going to just be on the website and post it, but in the interest of time, kind of doing the same thing, looking at it on a per FTES basis. Now, this is total FTES, so this includes resident and non-resident. So this is combined. So looking at it in comparison, right, San Francisco, again, total FTES, resident, non-resident combined as the denominator, and using the numbers on the previous slide as the numerator, $3,482.46 per FTES in academic salaries, $1,359 per FTES in classified salaries, employee benefits, $1,844 in employee benefits, $977 in 4,000, 5,000 supplies and services. Total, the sum of those four, $7,663 per FTES. And then in throwing capital outlay in there, capital outlay expenditures were $7,742 per FTES. So looking at it by category, you can see where we fall with respect to our peer group or our comparison group. So looking at academic salaries, we are the highest by about approximately $400 is the next one. Sonoma, which is Santa Rosa, is next. Then is Santa Monica, and again, keeping in mind Santa Monica has a large non-resident program or international program, and then fourth behind us is Contra Costa. You can kind of see on the classified salaries, the highest is Santa Rosa, I believe. Santa Rosa. Employee benefits, we are the highest out of the peer group, $1,844. The next highest is Contra Costa. Supplies and services, outside services, $977. We're not the highest, but we're probably up there towards the highest. And then looking at total expenditures, both including and excluding capital outlay, we are the highest on a per FTS basis. Now, kind of going back to I think a comment that Lillian said in 2 slides before, is that one thing that we need to be cognizant of is, related to productivity, but I would say more so than productivity, is that in 14-15, last fiscal year, we received $30 million in stability funding. That is for FTES that we didn't generate. We didn't serve that many students. We were in stability funding last year by approximately more than 7,000 FTES. These other districts weren't in stability funding. So that kind of has an impact upon the calculation. Now, because of productivity or lower productivity, we've kind of talked about it before. On the credit side, we're a little less than 12. That has an impact on the expenditures, not the revenue, because again, we have a funding floor with stability funding in terms of receiving money from the state for students that FTS that we didn't generate, we didn't serve. So, there's 2 pieces of that. Lillian, you mentioned productivity, that plays into it, but also more importantly, what plays into it is stability funding. And again, in this year, we received about $30 million in funding that large degree we spent, but we didn't generate the FTES, so that has an impact on these per FTES, dollars per FTES numbers.
I need to have that clarified. We used a 25,000 FTES approximately for our student base. Did we match that? I know that we have stability funding, but is our funding from from the state with the stability funding the equivalent to the number of students?
No.
So,
in terms of, okay, so I think to answer your question is, the denominator in these calculations is the 25,000, which includes the 23,000 resident and approximately 2,000.
but why
The expenditure level was based upon 32,000 FTES in terms of the funding.
Yes, but these comparisons feel to me, and you can tell me why this is incorrect, would be better if we were using the number of FTES that we're actually being funded for to see where our proportions are in relation to other colleges. Those two would need to be the same in order to, right, because that's where the proportions go, because we used to have those students. So picking the year 14-15 and then not matching the FTES that we're funded for with the funding means that the comparison is skewed, whereas if we went back to the year right prior to receiving stability funding, or there might be a reason not to use that year, but to use a year that was comparable to these other schools or to match those numbers.
Their actual FTES is close to their funded FTES. In our case, our funded FTES was quite different than our actual FTES.
Quite a bit lower.
So exactly. So you're using a very different denominator.
Right, but the benefit of the value in that is that we didn't reduce our spending downwards in terms of the amount of stability money that we had received. So going to Lillian's comment is that the last year that we had that more in alignment would have been 12-13, and then we're doing an analysis or a comparison that is may bear fruit, may add value, but is quite a bit dated.
Sure.
Something when I see these, I have to remind myself. We often think academic equals faculty, classified equals classified, but in this case, when I see that there's no administrator column, that means the academic salaries include all the academic administrators, the deans and so forth, up to the chancellor. The classified salaries includes the classified administrators.
Correct. So
it would be nice if either the terms were different or you actually put in parentheses includes that, because I think many people look at that and think, oh, that's all spent on faculty, right? And it's not.
Well, again, this is more than just a 2-minute exercise or survey or comparison. In subsequent slides that you will see, it'll break it down more concretely or more granularly in terms of the type of employee, both in terms of administrative versus non-administrative, both in terms of full-time versus part-time, and going down to a greater level. We're just not there yet.
But then I want to do
And I just wanted to really quickly ask then, so I do know that some of the 9,000 numbers for the student workers is under the classified, but where would be the student workers, where would they show up their salary?
Yeah, they would be under classified.
All of them?
All of
Okay.
them.
Thank you.
Okay. So, in the interest of time,
So we have reached our 30 minutes for this section. Does the council want to extend another 5 minutes, and then we will wrap it up? Again, I just want to make sure that we get through the agenda items in today's agenda. Lily?
I would like to request to be able to see what the charts look like when the FTES is raised to what we're funded for.
okay.
That would be very helpful
Okay.
to see it.
As opposed to actual FTES, funded FTES. So, for example, what you'll see, we'll see in Santa Monica for those districts that have a large non-resident international program, that comparison will be less meaningful.
But I think that the idea of comparing the proportions is what is helping me understand where City College how City College makes value decisions versus the argument over this specific number or that specific number, right? So our actual value decision isn't made. We're not making a value decision on 25,000 FTEs. We're funded for 30, and so we can't actually see what
right.
This is just not.
I get it. So what your request is basically put this slide together with 12, 13 data. And I wouldn't necessarily call it a value decision, but an analysis of where did we spend our money.
No, I'm asking for the FTES to be 30.99.
Okay.
Zero. Like,
For proportional comparison's sake,
Funded.
what we're asking for is breaking out the San Francisco line.
Okay. We can do that.
The denominator is what we're funded for and what we're
That would be perfect. That would be perfect. Show the San
because
Francisco
it's the
line.
proportion that is going to allow us to make
Easily done.
judgments.
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you. Are there other comments, questions? Again, I want to respect the fact that Ron's here, and I want to respect the fact that we have a lot of things to get through. Last questions, comments? Thank you, Ron. Last comments?
He hasn't done the document. There's more to this document.
Oh,
There's one more slide.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, so that was it.
No, it's fine. I have 3 minutes left, right? All right. So, kind of getting on the jump start on the tentative budget, there were or actually, when we looked at the multi-year planning document, there was some discussion in terms of how did the academic salaries, for example, those academic salary line item come to be. So, put together a slide, and we'll go into more depth on this at the next meeting when we're looking at the entire tentative budget. But the general 3 reasons why, or the underlying factors: base revenue reduction of 5%. Our funded base FTES is going down by more than 600 FTES. It's dropping from 30,990.24, which is the current year funded base, down to 29,372.11, which is going to be next year's funded base. Our current P2 that was just recently submitted was approximately 21,910, or almost 22,000. That drop of more than 1,600 FTS is about an $8.3 million drop in ongoing funding. That's that 5% drop down that we're going to basically have to adjust our budget. In terms of funded FTES, looking at, again, what would comprise the 29,372, there's kind of the breakout in terms of the base funding from the state on the Exhibit C. And the FTEF related to the different productivity levels. Productivity at 12, or on average, 24 students, approximately 24 students, resident students per class, we would need 2,097.67 FTEF in the budget. At a productivity of 15, we need to have quite a bit less, more students per class. From going from, on average, 24 resident students per class on average, to 30 resident students per class, which is productivity of 15. Basically, you see the delta there. At a productivity of 15, we would need to budget 1,766. So looking at our current position control, right now in the budget, in the same as we've had, almost the same that we've had the last 2 years, we've had 554 instructional FTEF, and this is only in the U Fund. Instructional FTEF. Doubling that, because in terms of load for fall and spring, that's about 1,100 FTEF. Of the, if our productivity target, say was at 15, the 1,109.31 would make up the lion's share of the 1,766. And so the part-time instructional FTEF would be the delta that we would need to fund and budget in order to build schedules of classes to get the FTES targets. So looking at it from a budget perspective, in the academic line item for instructional salary line item, this is how it's basically broken out. The dollars. These aren't the dollars, these are the FTF underlying the dollars. We've built in the budget 1,109.31 full-time contract employees, instructional faculty. And on top of that, we've built into the budget about 775.62 non-instructional FTF. Between the two, we've budgeted for, in that multi-year scenario, 1,884.93 instructional FTEF for the entire year. So going back to the question, well, where does this dollar come from in terms of the multi-year academic line for the instructional? This is where it's coming from. The dollars are associated to position control with each FTEF on a position basis. I know we're running out of time, but we'll go into more depth on it next meeting. Have I exhausted my time?
Can I just ask a question as a follow-up on a previous presentation? Small little issue, Ron, that I've been pursuing about retiring and faculty who are otherwise leaving. The numbers that you sent had the description on it 5-year retirement, but when you presented it, you said it was both retiring and other attrition. Certainly for my department, it wasn't even the full retirement, depending on when the 5 years began and ended. It wasn't clear to me which 5 years it was. It wasn't quite the full number of faculty. If you put in the other types of attrition, including, I'm sorry to say, one death, then it was really about less than half of the number of students in my department. I don't know whether you're planning to include these numbers in some fashion in the budget assumptions for the next time around, or where that's going?
Yeah, so you sent me your list, and we're in the process of comparing your list, and I think we're off by one, and we're trying to figure out where that one individual was. But again, that's the difference between individuals who occupy positions. We budgeted for positions. So Ron Gerhard is the accounting faculty member. I'm a full-time instructor. I'm retiring June 30, 2016. I may leave, but my position is still in there and it's still funded. So going back to the FTEF numbers, people may come and go, but the FTEF and the position and the funding associated with the position is still in there.
So you're saying these were the retirements where the position disappeared with the person?
No, I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that your request was, or the request of the PGC was, looking at a history or looking at some number of years on determining what, or having data behind how many faculty can we reasonably expect to retire. And that was the request, that was information request, responding back, and we're still kind of working out maybe some difference between your department and the numbers.
But
right?
I only bring up my department as an example, and my experience has also always been that if one department is wrong, probably a whole bunch of them are wrong.
Okay,
So,
but going to your question is, in terms of the budget, those don't necessarily have an impact upon the budget because, again, the position, the funding is still in there. So if Ron retires, that accounting faculty member, June 30th, 2016, that funded position is still in the budget. If it's not filled, then it goes to adjunct because someone's got to teach the classes.
okay, but you had it included in the budget assumptions additional positions being done through faculty position allocation, and many of those were replacement positions.
Right.
But they were being put into the assumptions as if they were new positions. I don't want to take up any more time on this, but I can see there's still a lot of work to be done.
Well, I don't recall the new position, but basically we're reallocating dollars. So whatever comes through FPAC would have to be a reallocation because we're not getting new funding.
But this has been a long-standing problem that we haven't cleared up. Because if we're getting allocation for FPAC, but we have retirements, we didn't get additional budget, that faculty position goes into our departmental budget. So FPAC is not deciding to say, not making clear distinction to say, we're looking at them budgetarily to say these are 50 additional positions this year. But we're not looking at our budgets and going, how many of those are actually replacing departmental budgets? It's not like I'm going to get an extra number of people this year through FPAC. I am, but I've also had more people than that retire. My budget hasn't adjusted. Right?
So in the interest of time, we'll take it up next time.
So at this point, again, as we discussed earlier in the agenda, we are moving the IEPI discussion next. So I'm going to invite Pam Mary to talk about the IEPI while Ron is still here, since it has some budget tie-in.
Good afternoon, everyone. So you've heard me talk about the institutional effectiveness, performance, or
Put a little closer to your mouth, that or this way.
so you've heard me talk about the institutional effectiveness partnership initiative from the State Chancellor's Office. And they have a framework of indicators which the college adopted last year. And every year there's a new set of indicators that we need to report on. And just let me remind you that you can find it at ccsf.edu IEPI. And I'm going to pull up the portal, which shows the data for all of the colleges, including us. So there are 5-year trend lines that are shown here, and for specific indicators, we are asked to do a short-term goal, a 1-year goal, and a long-term goal, which is a 6-year goal. We have some required items under district fiscal viability indicators. So fund balance, which was a requirement last year, is again a requirement this year. I believe the number last year was 9% for both short-term, long-term. Audit findings was also required last year and is again required this year. And basically we want all of those to be yes. Okay, that's our goal. Whether we reach the goal or not, that's our goal. And you'll see later on that there's an accreditation status which was required last year. It is again required this year, and of course fully accredited is our goal, short-term and long-term. So the piece that I wanted to talk about in particular, or I'm charged with talking about, has to do with the student performance and outcomes indicators. And you'll see, I'll just find the number. So it's number 9. I'm just going to talk about it. So this year, the new one is that we had to select from among math remediation, English remediation, or ESL remediation. This is sequence completion. And the assessment planning team had a lengthy discussion about this in consultation with the English department chair. And the recommendation was to go with English because that's an area of a lot of activity right now. That went through the planning committee. It also went through academic senate yesterday, and was the proposed goals were accepted as recommended, which is a you can see them on the planning committee update for those of you who are highly visual. There it is, a 1-year goal of 55% and a 6-year goal of 60%. The other metric is overall college-wide successful course completion. This is in credit, and that was required last year, is again required this year, and essentially these are the same goals as last year, 71% short-term, 73% long-term. So unless there are any questions or concerns, and I don't know if Ron has anything in particular to add, these will go to the State Chancellor's Office. June 15th is the reporting requirement.
Some years back when some of these measurements were put into place, there was concern coming from Sacramento that there were students who would come to the community colleges and were really not pursuing certificates or degrees, and that this was a bad thing. And students really needed to pursue certificates and degrees. They needed to have an ed plan right up front and so forth and so on. Which of these measures have now sort of resulted from that? There's, and I'm sort of asking, there are the kinds of measures that show, yes, we are encouraging students to move forward and get degrees, like the number of degrees we give out. But how about measures that are used to discourage students who are not pursuing degrees? Which ones are those?
So there are two measures. I don't know if this exactly answers your question, but I would say that the State Chancellor's Office has expanded its view in terms of measurement, and you see that in the new Student Success Scorecard with the Skills Builder category, and they're also looking at measures for non-credit. And so I imagine both of those coming in and being added to the framework. So there aren't measures, if I'm understanding your question, there's no sort of measure of who is being lost. I mean, in many cases it would be the inverse of these, right? But, you know, quote unquote lost. I think what the State Chancellor's Office is doing, rather than moving in the direction that I think maybe you may be hinting at, is in fact building out the measures to capture more of the different types of goals and the different student populations. And I think they're being rather forward thinking in doing that. I mean, perhaps we wish they would have done that sooner, but I see concerted attempts at that. And just as an example, our office went to the CTE launch board. There was a big convening just a week ago, and many people from City College went. People were going from all over the region to look at some of the new measures and data that's available on job placement, incremental wage gain, all kinds of things related to CTE and skills building.
If I may ask that question a different way to get at it better. So let's say that City College got an award-winning horticulturist who was teaching a gardening class, and we suddenly had a whole bunch of people, hundreds of people signing up to take a gardening class, and they weren't taking math or English or ESL, they were just taking the gardening class and nothing else, and they were not getting degrees. Would that influx of a large number of people who are just like taking a one-off class, is there some measurement in which that would harm us because we have these folks who are not looking for a degree?
No. No, because of the way the cohorts are designed?
Right.
No.
Jill, and then I just want to wrap up this piece and then move on to the other items.
I'd like to draw your attention to number 13, medial rate, ESL. If you look at the historical rates, it goes to 46, 52, 58, 64, 65. So if I'm interpreting this correctly, it's on the upswing. And is this something that the college is looking at as far as best practices? Am I interpreting this correctly as successful and something that should be looked at?
Yeah, we do sit down with the department chairs and go over the data with them and try to unpack what's happening in these various trend lines. So yeah, we do try to pinpoint the best practices that are happening. Not just ESL is doing a great job, but what in ESL specifically is making a difference. So we had that conversation most recently with English. We're actually overdue to have that conversation with ESL. I think the last time we had that conversation with them was maybe 8 months ago or so.
Is my inference accurate?
Well, what we have to do, so sometimes what happens is that there's noise in the data. So sometimes there are specific practice changes, and sometimes there are changes in the way that courses are coded. So we need to sort of narrow down and make sure we know what exactly is happening with the data. And we have the best grip on English right now, which is why we went with English this year. But I will say, with the Academic Senate conversation yesterday and some of the conversations that APT has been having, right now we're just doing the ones that are required.
What's APT?
The assessment planning team, sorry.
Okay, thank
The
you.
assessment planning team, which is the subcommittee of the planning committee. You know, we really may, instead of choosing between math, English, and ESL, the next go around, even if we're not required, have, you know, unpack each of those and have short-term and long-term goals for each of those. We didn't have the time to do that this time around, and so we did select English.
So, can you go back? Can you go back to your planning committee update sheet?
Yeah.
Was there another question? Oh, Denise?
Really fast on the ESL primary.
Yeah.
Is that the ESL 160 and above, or is it 150?
I can't tell you off the top.
Okay.
I have it, but
Okay.
not in my brain, it's in my files.
So I just wanted to bring to your attention again, Pam talked about the goals, and it's listed here in terms of the 1-year goal and the 6-year goal. So she just wants to get a sense from the council if that's okay in terms of the 1-year goal of 71% for the successful course completion, 6-year goal it being 73%, and the 1-year goal of the reading English completion being 55%. Again, this is an upward trend, and the 6-year goal is 60%. So that's if that's okay with the council. That's essentially what we're trying to ask. Is that okay as our aspirational goals?
The State Academic Senate recently took a position that outcomes is basically a 10+1. Clearly the English goal belongs to the English department post completion, so I would recommend that these pieces of this plan are the recommendation of the Academic Senate should carry forward information to me.
And again, I believe this was discussed yesterday. I think.
Yes.
Yeah, that academic senate.
Yes.
I'd further like to clarify that was our question earlier about whether this is a report or an action item. There's been multiple items that have come up under reports, such as our facilities management plan, which then morphed into, I need the council to vote on this because I need some sort of record of approval. In our process, then those should be clearly listed as action items for the council as opposed to reports.
So do you want to answer? How would you answer?
That's just a procedural, because the bleeding of the lines, we already did this last December, where we listened to a lot of information and we're told at the very end, I need you to vote on this. That would be an action item. If this is a report, there's no vote.
So again, if it's an institutional-wide plan, it would require first reading and second reading.
Right. This is,
Actually, so the piece of it we're looking at, just this piece right here, the course completion and the English completion, is for information only.
Yes, I mean, as it's stated, yes, this is just to, again, this has been proposed to us as informational. In terms of the technical, again, I don't know where it is with the academic senate.
Yeah, it was recommended by the Academic Senate yesterday.
Yes.
Yeah, I brought it to the Academic Senate yesterday and it was recommended.
So if academic senate has heard this and has discussed this and is okay with it, then it's within your 10+1 purview.
And I'm clarifying these pieces, but not like the financial, there's other pieces of this that are an institutional level issue. And I'm not sure if any of those that you presented, Pam, require a recommendation from PGC, any of those other items. Some of them seem rather fixed.
Yeah, I would defer to Ron on that, sorry, because he's working on other things in the back. But they are basically, I mean, do we want to have audit findings? Do we want a clean audit? So of course, yes, we want a clean audit. Do we want to be accredited? Yes, of course, we want to be accredited. In terms of the fund balance, the 9% was chosen last year, and that was based on the board policy, and there was a long discussion about, fund balance versus reserves, and So I don't think that those need to get revisited, but in the interest of transparency and process, I wanted to make sure that the council was aware, and also aware of the academic senate recommendation on the course completion and the English sequence completion.
And just to know, in terms of answering the bigger question, for consistency purposes, we do need to have those discussions, and if there's something that we didn't do correctly, please,
Yes,
please bring it
so
up.
if this report is something that we need to have discussed, it needs to be agendized. Not, or, right, so this is coming to us. Is this part of the update? Is that what was decided at the beginning of this meeting, that this was part of the update?
Again, this particular section was moved up because it has some budget implications, just so that Ron is here to talk about it, and that's just what we just talked about. At this point, again, this
Okay,
is.
so this is agendized.
Yes,
I
correct.
see it right here,
Right.
on number 2. So, and I'm sorry to be a little, if I may. If we need to, this is being presented to us, and we need to take action on and consider the fund balance, which I believe is the only fungible item on here, then we would need a second reading. If not, then this was presented and we don't need a second read because the other items are 10+1 and already have a recommendation. So it doesn't need to come back again.
I do not think it needs to come back again, but I don't want to speak for Pam or Ron or for academic senate.
Ron,
Yes, ma'am.
was the fund balance for our information only?
Like the rest of the document, my understanding is yes. I was only here to really answer any questions, either related to fund balance or to the audit findings, if there were any relevant, any questions on those topics.
I would like to move that we thank Pam for all of her work on everybody who does it presenting this. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And again, for consistency's sake, please bring it to our attention, to my attention, if there's something that we're not doing that's consistent in terms of institutional plan that needs, again, for the answer. Thank you very much. Thank you. I want to recognize that we do need to take a break at some point in time, but I also want to acknowledge the comment made earlier by our Vice Chancellor for Student Development. We do not have students here at the PGC, and at this point, I want to respect the fact that we're going to take up these two VP and AP matters. We should have students at the table. So at this point, I'm not sure if we, obviously we're going to table these two items if that's okay with the council, but I certainly want to just get the council's wishes. Lillian?
Well, the AP items?
So the first one's the AP 5.12.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was just hearing you wrong. I apologize. I'm good.
So let's take the first issue. So the AP 5.12, we do not have students here. It is a student matter. So if it's okay with the council, I think we should table this. And same thing for the next item, BP 1.015. We will table it as well. Okay, thank you very much. Would you like to take a break now, or we'll go for the next report plan and come back? So I know that it's about 15-20 minutes max. I know it's pretty straightforward. What are the wishes of the council? Should we ask Lonnie to present it and take a break? I see head nodding. So Lonnie, if you don't mind, we're going to have you present, and then we'll take a break afterwards. Thank you.
So what you have in front of you, it's in your packets, this is the Equal Employment Opportunity Plan. And basically it's something we must submit to the State Chancellor's Office every 3 years. The last time we submitted it was in 2013, that was our first plan. It's fairly new, this whole EEO plan business, I think. This format that I hope you've read through it. It was sent to all the constituent groups. I know I've gone to Academic Senate, although I got to go yesterday.
Stephen Brown covered for you well.
Oh, okay, great. Stephen Brown's a great number. Anyway, so there are a number of components to the EEO plan. Just a couple of things I want to say about it in general. The format was designed by the State Chancellor's Office way back when these came out. A lot of colleges follow this format because it's obviously a little daunting to make this up out of whole cloth. A lot of the language in the plan is either language developed by the State Chancellor's Office or it's straight out of Title V. I've gone through the plan, the previous 2013 version, updated it based on updated language in Title V. There have been some changes made in this version that you're seeing, that I'm seeing, because I sent it to Grace in track changes that included a lot of the feedback I got from the cabinet, from Academic Senate, from I think a couple of the administrators, and so we've had a lot of feedback on the plan. This is pretty much coming to you as first reading. Obviously, it needs to go to the Chancellor for her signature, and then it has to go to the Board of Trustees for approval. And then it has to be submitted to the State Chancellor's Office by June 30th, which is why you're seeing it now, and we'll see it at the next meeting. So I guess that is pretty much it. The various components, you know, the first component obviously is the introduction. Second component is the definitions. These are straight out of Title V, pretty much verbatim. No, I will say they are verbatim. I never like to say anything's absolute because, you know, I'm just like that. But anyway, these are all pretty much straight out of Title V. The policy statement of the district, this is pretty much reflected in AP, it's pretty much reflected in BP 1.30 and AP 1.30. Delegation of responsibility basically breaks it down. The board is overall responsible for drafting plans. The chancellor is responsible for implementation. The Title V EEO 88 compliance officer is responsible for obviously overseeing implementation of the plan. The Equal Employment Opportunity Advisory Committee, of which Stephen is a member. Obviously, we've discussed this at a meeting or two. The agents of the district good faith efforts. And it talks about the advisory committee, which we're supposed to have. Obviously, we do have an advisory committee that's made up of, I think, a couple of administrators, three or four faculty, some classifieds, and we've tried to get some students, but as you all know, student participation is a bit daunting. Plan component 6 talks about complaints. It mostly talks about that my office is responsible for for overseeing the investigation of complaints filed by anybody who feels they've been discriminated against in hiring. Notification to district employees that the plan exists, which is on the website. Training for screening selection committees, which I'm sure all of you have sat through a search committee orientation with me and Mia. Written notice to community organizations, we could be better about that. I'm going to work with Clara on that. 10 is the analysis of the district workforce in the applicant pool. HR does that piece, and some of that is submitted to the State Chancellor's Office by Clara's office and by the Office of Research and Planning. Other measures necessary to further equal employment opportunity. These are just, this is where all the districts can have a little flexibility as to how they're going to promote EEO in hiring and in promotion. And then finally, the last component, it was named rather oddly because actually the text had nothing to do with it. It's renamed Postgraduate Recruitment for Careers in Education. It was named something else and it didn't seem to match. So that's basically it. It's fairly straightforward. It is a creature of Title V and the State Chancellor's Office. We don't have a whole bunch of flexibility in this. In this format, certainly we have some flexibility here and there, not a whole lot. Pretty much component 11 is where we have the most flexibility, but if you have any questions. Yes?
For component 10, that analysis, is that something that's available for us to look at on our website, or can we request a copy of that?
I believe it is on the HR website. Don't quote me on that, and certainly, I'm sorry, I apologize, I'm not an expert on that, but I believe HR does put out a report every year.
Would the contact person for that be Clara?
I believe so. I'm not, either Clara or Letty Sazo.
Letty would be your better.
Letty would be better. I mean, she's usually at her desk. Clara has a lot going on. Or she has someone in her office.
Other questions? So again, this plan is something that college needs to submit every 3 years, and it is our turn to submit it by June 30th. Right. Seeing no questions, thank you very much, Lonnie. Thank you, Dash.
Sorry, question. Sorry. Is the component 12, is that like the grow your own program and things like that, or?
Sounds right.
It could be. It's actually a little bit more than grow your own. It's grow your own plus. I mean, basically, we want to step up recruitment efforts by going to the graduate schools like at San Francisco State, San Jose State, and encouraging people to pursue a career in education and possibly coming to City College. We don't have a grow your own program. That's why I took that language out.
Oh, okay.
Because it really doesn't exist right now. I know there's talk of bringing it back, but to be completely honest and accurate to the state chancellor, I took it out because it's not really going right now. But it is kind of like that. It's the idea about it.
So I guess my question would be, you say this is language that's mostly coming right out of Title V. Is this a requirement that we do component 12?
This, as I said, this format was in the boilerplate EEO plan format from the state chancellor.
Okay.
Yes. So they're trying to, and now they're really on the whole EEO thing, particularly for recruitment in faculty. They want to diversify the workforce in faculty. The state chancellor's office hosted a few conferences. And so basically what this is about is not targeted recruitment per se, but more in-depth, efforts at recruitment, I would think.
But at City College versus you said San Francisco State, or?
No. Where we go to San Francisco State and say, hey, don't you want to teach at the community college level? Try to recruit people to come over to City College. It's really about, casting our net a little wider. Yes, ma'am.
It's not a specific question per se, but is there a place somewhere on the website for HR where it kind of shows the diversity of places that we attempt to recruit from, or how? Or?
I don't know. I'm not in HR.
I've always been kind of just curious about how that's working or not working.
I don't know.
I can help. I'm at the Human Resources website, and there's a little tab that says hiring and employee data report.
Oh.
Yeah.
So there you go. Have fun.
All right, I will go at it.
Yeah, Clara usually gives a report every year to the board. I can't remember when she said she gives it. I don't know if you remember, Steve, what she said. I think she gives it in the springtime, just to show what the hiring trends were for the previous year, because it takes a while to compile that data. But it is there. And they put it together. And I believe Research and Planning put something together too. Yes?
And this is also divided by classified and statutory. So if you see, look at the classified, it's much more than others.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, she has it. I think she does by classified administrative faculty. Hiring. Yeah.
So thank you, Lonnie.
Thank you.
For the report. We will take a 5-minute break and we'll start back up with the technology plan with JP and Julian Prentice. 5-minute break.
Is it possible?
Lillian will make quorum.
Oh, yeah.
She's our
excellent.
She's our quorum.
I will not speak until you tell me.
I'm sure you can read speak as well.
Julian.
So,
can we start? Yes. You guys can start talking. I'm here.
You say long as she's here.
I just want to go back to the question that Lillian raised just right after I said we're going to take a break. And the question is, does the council want a second reading of the EEO plan? Again, the purpose of a second reading is if there are concerns with the first reading, then we will bring it back for a second reading. But if the council is okay with today's first reading as good enough, then we don't need to bring it back in 2 weeks. So I'd like to ask the council, what are your desires? Okay, so what I'm sensing from the council is that we do not need to bring back the EEO plan for a second reading.
I don't believe so.
So thank you very much. The plan has been recommended to move forward to the chancellor. Thank you, council, and thank you, Lottie.
Council.
So at this point, we're moving on to the next plan, which is the technology plan, and I want to acknowledge Jay Field for being here today. Again, I'm going to ask the same question to the council. Would you like to bring back the technology plan after the presentation? And if we don't need to do so, then we don't need to do so. But I just want to make sure that the council gets to make that decision. Thank you. All yours, Jay.
Okay. Hello? Hello? Oh, I haven't been in this. I think you can all hear me, yes?
Yes.
All right, good enough. You in the back, you can hear me? That's good to know, good. All right. So, update on the technology plan. We have an existing City College technology plan, ITAC, and assorted guests, resources, all sorts of people have been taking on a yearly update of the tech plan so that we have a rolling 2-year tech plan. So the idea is we will keep updating it. Every year we update it. We'll slap a new year on it. It'll be good for 2 years, but we're not going to wait until it sort of expires before we keep trying to update it. We have guiding principles in the technology plan. By the way, these were all here existing in the plan before I got here. These are great principles for a technology plan. We have a vision for technology at City College. Again, I think really a great vision for what we would like our technology to be like and what it should enable here. So then the plan has college-wide technology goals. And the college-wide goals, the technology goals are each mapped to the educational master plan. So what I'm showing you in this presentation are snippets, edited pieces from the plan that are just meant to illustrate what we did, how we did it, and why we did it. Okay, so if you're really interested, of course, the plan document is really what you should read. But we have a college-wide goal. It maps to an educational master plan goal. And then we have ways in which we think we will accomplish that goal. And again, these are just examples. Second, we have 3 college-wide goals. They map to the EMP. We have one here. Of course, this really fits for transform and sustain the infrastructure. And again, these are just a few of the items that come out of this. We have a third goal, to foster effective and transformative uses. And again, we have some ways in which we see the college achieving that. We then took a look at key trends in technology. And this is really important for us because these are things that we see. Some are short-term, they're here. Some are longer-term. And they're all things that we need to take into account as we plan around technology here. Obviously, some things, the evolution of the physical and virtual classroom, smart classrooms for learning and teaching, right? Those are here. 3D printing and maker technologies, that's here today. Wearable technology. If I still had my Fitbit, Roy and I could challenge each other. except it's cross-platform now is the problem, so I don't know how to do that. The ongoing expansion of BYOD, bring your own device. That's enormous here. Enormous. Think about our student population that brings their own devices here. Think about our employees, right? And we went on and on because there are a lot of these that affect us. Increased use of the LMS in the face-to-face classroom. I mentioned this yesterday at the Academic Senate. Right? We're making a move to Canvas, a different learning management system. I think faculty are going to find that it's easier. I think the adoption of faculty to use this tool in a face-to-face class to help augment it, I think it's going to spike up a lot. It's certainly the trend that's out there at other colleges. And there are quite a few. And security is a major one, of course. On my end of the world, security, infrastructure, disaster recovery, business continuity. There's a lot that goes on in these. And so these inform the kinds of technology decisions that we're making. So then the plan has a particular format. When we start looking at the different functional areas, they talk about their mission, they reflect back on the previous technology plan and whether they achieved the goals that were in it for them. They talk about the state of their current technology, and then they give their coming strategic goals in each functional area. And these are the areas that contribute to the plan. And I said this yesterday as well. There is a lot of really good, I think what is good about participatory governance that happens here. In the library, I know lots of people contributed to this. So we had one person officially on the committee, but the library really contributed. The person went back, talked to the library, got input. This is how we're supposed to function. We did the same in ITS, I know. So the plan has all these different areas. Hopefully all of these groups had wide participation. We certainly encourage that. And what I've done is taken some excerpts from the library section just to show you what this looks like. And so here's the mission. To fulfill its mission, the library does this and, of course, a lot more. This is highly edited down. And then what happened if we look back on the past technology plan and the Library and Learning Resource Center? What did we hit? What did we not hit? What were things that happened? Then let's take a look at what the current environment is in the library. Okay? And it includes the media center, audiovisual, we have these different kinds of systems, we have labs, etc. And of course, there's a lot of really good detail in the plan that I'm not showing. Then it is the strategic goals, easy for me to say, of the Library and Learning Resource Center. So they want to enhance access to information resources, and then this maps to these educational master plan goals. And it's a variety of different kinds of goals, right? We have goals that are stabilize funding, but we also have goals that are improve the quantity, quality, and variety of digital information available. And so this is all through the plan, all the different functional areas. And Julian Prentice, who was supposed to be here with me today, should be happy to answer any questions. Just email them to her.
Text her too.
Lonnie.
Going back to the previous slide, you have something about foreign language resources. Does that include closed captioning? I mean, closed captioning is not foreign language, but for the hearing impaired, Section 508 of the 1973.
You know, that's Were you going to answer that question?
I can answer that question.
I did. I want to make sure I knew what you were raising your hand for.
Okay. That's an issue that we are very alert to, and in foreign language learning resources, you know, the language center has been a part of the library. It's probably going to be moving over to be a part of the foreign language department instead, but it will still will share space with them. Obviously there's some issues in terms of language, in terms of captioning and so forth. You can't, something where it's supposed to be speaking comprehension, you can't give away the answers. But we're certainly very conscious of following the guidelines, and we'll come to you when we have them.
And I would also just add that the tech plan is meant to be a vision of where we're going, right? And so there are certain givens, such as accessibility, that aren't necessarily coming up in the same way because we're looking at them as a given, right? Accessibility is a legal mandate. We don't have a choice, and we don't really want one, but we don't have a choice. And so when you look at it like that, you know, that's the place that would come into the plan might be perhaps for an area that is looking to expand what they're doing in that area or to adopt new technologies, like we're talking about in DSPS, right? We're talking about adopting a different technology to deliver the captioning, right?
You want me to explain it?
Yes.
You want to hand me that microphone right there next to Lily? Is it on? Okay. Nope, it's not on. Hold on. I know how this works. You hold the button.
Okay, now it works. Okay, so I want to make one comment here and then I'll tell you what we're talking about. As far as captioning, the general stance of 508 is that any material that you're showing video-wise needs to be open captioned, where you're not saying, oh, you can turn them on or you can turn them off. The answer is they're on and they're on all the time. You just keep them on. And the district should not be purchasing anything that does not have captions already in it. Okay, the new technology we're looking at is the state chancellor's office is thinking about setting up what's called a virtual relay interpretive services, so that instead of having to have physical interpreters in the classroom, you could have a screen with microphones on the teacher, and it would go to a relay service that would be somewhere else in the state. And a sign language interpreter would appear on the screen or on the student's laptop. And that could happen anywhere in the district. And it would be much easier to provide the mandated service on demand rather than going, uh-oh, we don't have an interpreter for Tuesday at 3 o'clock for the science building. What are we going to do? We could dial in a number, an interpreter would be available like that. And that also can happen for real-time captioning in the classroom. It could be via remote. Right. And it should save money, and it should be more available widely to more people.
So my point to Lonnie, back to Lonnie, was that that's the kind of thing for something to me that's a given that could appear in the tech plan, right? Adopting technologies to do something better. There's a lot that's not in there, right? It's not a list of priorities, as in here are the top 10 technology priorities that we are tackling. It's not, the plan was never constructed that way, and I actually am glad it's not constructed that way, because this is a plan, again, about where we see ourselves going and what we want to accomplish with technology. What actually happens, you know, there are many, many factors that affect how we actually make progress on different items here, right? Right now, we've got money for classrooms to do our classroom renovation project, right? In other years, there could be money and the money's good for something else. So we, of course, are going to take advantage of the resources that we have currently. So this is really more, if you want to know where different areas, where technology as a whole, what we're thinking, where we want to go, That's the point of having the plan. Lillian, you did have your hand up or not?
I did, but I'm actually okay. I guess the online digital textbook library, I should have asked you about this yesterday. Working with the 50 lower division courses that are most often taken by students enrolled in the state. Those textbooks, is it working with the faculty with the textbook of their choice? Or is it the creation of more uniform online resources?
I think that really both those things can be included. In other words, there's a whole open educational resources movement, which is about the creation of those resources, as well as helping faculty, if they're interested, in identifying pre-existing resources. So I would look at it as that's both of those things. And there's a project in the state to have courses that only have open educational resources as their materials.
There's Z degrees.
Z degrees, yes.
Z degrees, setting up degrees that students can take all of the coursework without, and the entire degree can be obtained using only open source, free resources, no textbook required.
Yeah.
Other questions for Teresa?
So, all of the information that's in the plan, like student services is my area, so I'm looking at that. This is all, so the plan is set out, we have these goals, and is the ITAC group then the group that's charged with pushing everything forward? So a plan can be created, but how?
No. ITAC,
how does that
ITAC is,
work?
you know, ITAC is a governance group, it's not an operational group. Okay. And so it is really, for instance, in student development, it's up to student development to push those projects forward. Right? And the projects that get pushed forward are the ones that get accomplished. And so in each of these areas, when we're talking about these functional areas like this, it's those areas that are then responsible for their priorities. You know, we work a lot with financial aid. I'll point to Elizabeth, right? She's very vocal about the priorities related to technology that are important for her area, right? And so those are the ones that get to the stage of can we do it, is there money, et cetera, blah, blah, blah. And then if those things pan out, like Campus Logic, that we're getting ready to do, then they happen. But ITAC is not going to go back as a group and say, Karen, I don't know, 1.4, I don't think you guys really hit that one. What's happening with that? No one's going to do that, right? This is the library's intention of what they wish to do. It's very good for my department, of course, because it lets us really understand at a level that we might not always get from these different areas what it is they're trying to accomplish. Please.
So this is the plan, which is just kind of the overarching document, not the procedures and things, but one thing about the open access things that are encompassed and shared in here, which I appreciate, there's two areas that I'd like to speak to. One is Wi-Fi. Thank you for expanding the way Wi-Fi is done now. So certainly in the library where we deal with a lot of registration, the new system is much more improved and better. Is there a plan to just make it open?
When you say open, what does open mean?
No registration required.
No. There is no plan. In fact, I am vehemently opposed to having open Wi-Fi except in places where we have a legitimate community need. Now, we open the Wi-Fi for the first 2 weeks of classes so that we enable students to get their registration going. The issue is accountability. I have no accountability if people do not have to log into the Wi-Fi.
Accountability in what respect?
Accountability for your actions on the net, on this college network.
I mean, are we reporting to? Are we? I mean, can you explain that a little more?
Sure. The kid who downloads a movie from Sony, and I get a letter from Sony that says you have people illegally downloading movies. Well, there's no accountability if that person's logged in as guest. Right? I mean, we log in for a reason here, and it's so that you are accountable. Look, this is a work network, right? It's not your home network. So I am the same as everybody else. We're accountable for what we do on this network, right? You would be maybe surprised or not as to the things that my department deals with of people's behavior on the network.
So we're tracking usage?
Well, we're not actively watching it in that way, but the usage is logged, and so it's very good after the fact. That we don't have the bandwidth, the will, the people to be able. I mean, no one's watching. Oh, that was wrong, right? And none of that happens. But when I get a letter from Sony, we can go back and try to ascertain. All right, what's the deal with this?
Are we if people are going on sites, we're not tracking. It's like, hey, you are on these sites, you should stay at that site. Are we doing anything like that?
Well, in essence, we are.
Without being asked by Sony or whomever.
Right. No, we are tracking simply because it's the way technology works.
But are we, or is you or your office or whomever, noting like, oh, we're getting all this traffic to...
No, we are not. Unless a problem is caused, we don't have the time to take a look at any of that stuff. But we do look at our firewall logs. We do see things that represent viruses and malware and different problems, and then we investigate, right? And it may be your computer that has that virus, that has that problem, and it's that issue at the firewall that caused us to then investigate. Nobody's looking at where you're going, and in fact, ITAC approved a change to the firewall where if you go someplace that we really don't think you should go, we put up a web page. And it says, we don't think you should go here. And we let you go.
And
we do let you go.
We do. I've gone to sites which should be legitimate, and I've got that message.
And that's why we allow you to go. But the experience that we see is all the negative stuff. I mean, just to be honest, right? We wind up having to deal with all the problems that occur, not the things that obviously work out and we're perfectly fine.
Well, but there's a barrier then if I have to, or our students have to encounter a site and not know how to, because it just says contact your administrator, right?
No, it gives a warning in a reasonably spoken English that a normal person should be able to understand. That says, because we approved the whole message at ITAC, right. That says basically, we don't advise you going to this site, and it allows you to go anyway. Okay. It doesn't just say you can't go. Okay. And the only things that we prohibit you from going to are just they're blocked by a service at our firewall that we pay for.
A different turn was on. Thank you for the progress on the smart classrooms. I know that's a lot of work. I know it's also a lot of money. And you've spoken before about it's a rollout over several years. And I don't know, how many years will you complete the project?
Well, we expect to have the money next year. Beyond that, my boss just left, so I guess I can say anything. Beyond that, we're hoping to make sure that even if it's our own money, instead of this great money from the state, that we don't lose momentum. So we may not do 75, but the idea is we've got to keep renovating the learning spaces on this campus and through the district.
What I am getting to is for those people who are sensitive to some of those markers and everything that come in those rooms, and there's several folks, it's here and there that this happens. And I know you want to minimize the exceptions and address the moving forward into the technology age. Yet there are still faculty and classified and other workers and students on campus who are sensitive to those chemicals in some of the rooms on the markers. And I'm wondering, it seems that those people come forth in a one-on-one sort of situation. Is there a way to actually make it easier for them to address those concerns, so it's not always one person putting up a fight, right, or a small group of people putting up a fight, and having to figure out each time how to contact J Field or...
Well, the math department came to me and said...
Absolutely. They came to you individually, and then there's another department, as you probably know, John Adams, there's this group of VSL folks out there. There's these little pockets of people who don't know how they can do this, and it seems like there might be a methodology to address those needs, because it is a real issue for those folks.
Well, we are, as we do these projects, we are talking to the departments that are affected. The world is a very imperfect place. And so, we cannot roll out technology in rooms with chalkboards. And so basically what is happening is that the people who are having this adverse reaction for whatever reasons, the choice is either chalkboards or technology.
And those people...
unfortunately, it is an either-or choice.
Correct. And I think people are willing to make that choice and say, hey, okay, chalkboards are totally cool with me.
Well, I understand that, and the good news for people like that is there's a lot of rooms to do on this campus, and I foresee that there will be rooms with chalkboards for a few years to come. So, should at some further point, I'm going to look at Anna, Academic Affairs, should at some point we want to say we are going to leave 5% of the classrooms the way they are, which I would never be in favor of personally, but it wouldn't matter to me, then that could be what we do.
I want to acknowledge the fact that we went 5 minutes over, so I do see 2 hands, and then we do need to move on. So Attila and Jesse.
So really quickly, just that we have one of our faculty member who is not. She's teaching in the smart classroom. She's highly sensitive to this marker, but with the new one that we are using, she has no problem. The new marker.
By the way, those new markers.
I would highly recommend because she actually has reaction that she has to take whatever medication if she uses the old one. With this new one, she has absolutely no problem. So I recommend them to try that first.
Sure. Are those being made available to people who raise concerns? I mean, that's the...
Well,
yeah, we're giving them. We bought markers for every faculty member in the schedule teaching in any of the new smart classrooms. We bought them. I delivered them actually the flex day in the fall.
But the low odor,
low odor. They are refillable. And it was faculty here that identified them for us, by the way.
Jill, I need to chime in.
To not violate people's HIPAA compliance, but I know ADA or ADA. When we talk about chalkboards and chalk dust, not only is it highly disruptive and toxic to my beautiful AV equipment and computer equipment, but there are several faculty colleagues of mine that cannot actually be in rooms with chalk and chalkboards due to their asthma and the dust. So, I don't want to get in with it, but it.
So it's just a very difficult thing. I want to acknowledge Lonnie, but it's a very difficult thing to balance. Is all I really want to say, right? I do understand people's concerns. I've seen this at every school I've been at, and at every school we've tried to, transform these learning spaces.
I just want to say, as the ADA compliance director, that there are people who are allergic to chalk and the markers, and there is a thing called dust resistant chalk. Because I do require that for some people who have
I realize it's a hassle to AV and AV equipment, but it is a real issue that we have to deal with in the workplace if somebody has chemical sensitivity.
Thank you, Lonnie. I appreciate that. And Alan had mentioned classified staff. I think when you talk about classified staff and shop boards or dry erase boards or any of that, the majority of classified staff are the custodians that are trying to keep the spaces clean. So it's less of a chalk and a dry erase and all of that, but it is a it's a workplace issue for the custodians to really try to keep the spaces clean. So I would encourage every employee of the college to to be as neat as you possibly can.
But let me tell me your name.
Alan.
Alan. So, what do you think would be the best process that we could put out there so that it wouldn't be this individual thing that you were talking about? What would you envision?
Well, I mean, I think acknowledging that there is sensitivity and allowing those folks to identify I don't know how it works out for. Certainly, a department or a group or a classroom does not get assigned a space. All spaces are shared by everybody. So we understand
That's
that.
correct.
So, but at least reserving some spaces and making it known to people who step forward, or maybe even before they even step forward, but making it known as the rollout happens that this is going to be part of the plan.
Okay. Well, I will look over again at Anna and just say that we have classrooms that are not going to be done within the next 2 years, and people that may talk to her as academic affairs that don't know to talk to me, that we'll just start to adjust our scheduling so that over the time we have some spaces that these people can use, and then we have our other spaces. I mean, the good and sad news is we have so much to do.
I do need to say we need to move on to the next agenda item. I do want to thank Jay and Julian Prentice, of course,
Yes.
at the ITAC committee for being involved in this technology plan. I do want to ask the council if it's okay that we're good with this first reading, unless you want to bring it back in 2 weeks. But I think the plan itself is pretty robust.
I suspect that there won't be any additional items 2 weeks from now, but given that there were lots of things that raised, I think it would be good to give the members of the council an opportunity to look it over and see if there are other things that they want to talk about. So I would recommend it being on the agenda and finished and concluded at that time.
Other thoughts, comments?
Sorry, what? Are you recommending a second reading?
Yeah, I'm recommending a second.
Supposed to have a second reading, so right now, if we're going to vote, it's not to have a second reading. It's not to have it, but not to.
We don't have to vote.
Right, you don't have to. Exactly.
Just as usual.
Okay.
As usual.
Well,
I see Joe's hand.
I would recommend that we do not have a second reading.
Come back.
And I would recommend that, as Karen mentioned, it may not be anything new, so that if it's already agendized, if at some point in time we don't see any reason to have a second reading, maybe we can just eliminate it. There's already a placeholder, so maybe.
Well, my suggestion is that we do bring it back for the second reading, so that we can't decide between now and then to take it off the agenda. We would be deciding now to take it off the agenda.
We're already starting our next meeting at 1:30 in the afternoon.
I think it'd be very quick on the next
I
one.
agree with Joe. We have a heavy agenda already on next meeting.
Others?
Is there a motion? It's already there.
I'm making a motion that we remove the technology plan's second reading from the May 19th agenda.
So today's first meeting will suffice. That's essentially. So we have a motion that today's first reading will suffice, and there's no need to bring it back in 2 weeks for a second reading. So that's the motion on the floor. And I second. I see Vinicio seconded. Okay, discussion. Okay, I'm sorry. On favor of this motion, again, that this first reading will suffice, please say aye. Keep your hands up. Please keep your hands up so that I can do that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. Those opposed, please keep your hands up. 1, 2, 3, 4. Abstention? We have 1. So we have 5, 4, and 1. So this technology plan will suffice and will not be back for a second reading in 2 weeks. Thank you very much. Motion passed.
Can I just say one thing?
Yes.
You know, ITAC continues to meet. If the people, if you have concerns, if you have things that you really would like to be voiced, first of all, you're welcome to attend an ITAC meeting. Our calendar is on the web. Everybody's welcome. And you can send your concerns to me. The idea, you know, we're happy to hear them. I mean, really.
Thank you very much, Council. We're now going to turn our attention to Anna Davies and Karen to give us information about the enrollment management plan first reading today.
Jesse, I know that many of us need to be at the retirement party. I got a text that they're waiting for people and certificates. I personally, as a visa, believe I need to leave, but I don't know what the planning was. I thought there was planning that the formal part started sometime after 5.
And that was sort of my push to try to give this very important enrollment management plan time to come to first reading. So I know that both Anna and Carol are here, and certainly we do need to give them the time. If you need to leave, I'm not going to be able to tell you to stay, but if you can stay for as long as you can, we all would like to go to the retirement party as well. So if you're okay, please let them start the presentation, and we can go from there. Okay. Thank you. Okay, thank you.
Well, you're probably feeling bland to death today, so let us give you a brief summary. We've been working, Carol is a member of the committee and then becoming co-chair about mid-year this year, and I have been working with individuals that you see listed on the front of this plan.
And many others.
And many others who have come as not official members of the committee, but were interested and wanted to contribute, have been working towards the creation of a plan for enrollment management for us for the past 8 months. And so what you see in front of you is our draft. We are in the process of soliciting feedback, so we're here today to not only encourage you to take a close look at this, but also invite your comments and feedback. Our hope is to have this move forward and really be used as a tool over the next year to focus and guide our work very clearly on restoration activities. So those activities that we feel will yield us the largest restoration in the coming year. And so you see some sections that have data, sections that have some review of current status, and the recommendations are at the end of the document. So if you wanted to just kind of look at what are we really proposing, you flip to the back.
Page 55.
But we are also here just to answer questions or hear your comments and go from there. No, I was going to say hearing none.
I do want to acknowledge to the audience that this presentation was presented at yesterday's Academic Senate. So certainly the faculty had a chance, the Academic Senate had a chance to make comments, but I certainly want to turn to the council floor. Karen?
I don't mind my keeping people here to comment on it. I've actually been thinking about it some more since yesterday, so I haven't had time to do much more with it. Restoring FTES to the college is very important. And when I look at this plan, I'm very concerned, as you know. I see that the FTES that's talked about has to do with starting from 2009, I think it was, 2010, right? So there's sort of no, as I mentioned yesterday, there's kind of no normal numbers here. Right. But at that time, it does talk about the fact that there were a lot of students of all ages. So it wasn't just the younger students. We had students of, and it wasn't just the retirees and the older students. We have students of all ages here. As I learned yesterday, another component to the large FTS we had in the past, I had known this but had forgotten it, had to do with a lot of things that were counted for FTES that are no longer counted for FTES. Lab work of various sorts, in English and foreign languages. There was even a little bit of FTES coming in from the library, which we're not counting anymore, right? So those things fed into the productivity number. So when I see that the productivity number from 2010 being taken as the goal for the future productivity number, as we all know, there are basically two ways to increase the productivity number: to increase the number of students or decrease the number of faculty without decreasing the number of students, right? And of course, what we want to do is to increase the number of students. To just meet the productivity goal with the same number of students we have now means a much smaller college than what we have now. So then I turn to so the productivity number was based, the productivity we had was based on the fact that it was a recession, we had a lot of students. It was based on the fact that we had students of all ages. It was based on the fact that we had all this lab and other kinds of FTES that were being collected. Those were all part of the productivity that was here. And that's the number that's being held up as a goal. So then when I look to see, well, what's going to be done to bring that productivity number back, well, there's no way to bring back the way we used to count labs, right? There's, I don't see very much about bringing back the students of all ages. There's a statement in here that we, of course, we wouldn't want to bring back the recession, but we can't predict recessions, and so there's a statement in here that basically says, so we really can't even work on trying to bring back working age students in any numbers. I can find you what page it's on. But whether it says that or not, and I know you're going to disagree with me about what you said, if you look at the back and the section, so what's actually in here that would bring back students of all ages, right? And that's where I think this could be greatly improved. There could be something more robust put in here about bringing back students of all ages. There's a short section on lifelong learning. It's on page 52 of my copy, and it says, what's for lifelong learning? Well, there's continuing education, which we know actually doesn't even create FTES because it's a different program. There's older adults. That's a pretty narrow age group. And there's PE and dance. And those are the only three things that are called out for lifelong learning, right? There are certainly some things here that will help with students of all ages, including, and this is very important that it's in here, improving the registration process so there won't be so many people who are snagged out by things that they hit the wrong screen. It doesn't make it clear that you don't necessarily have to take a placement test. All those things are being worked on and will continue to be worked on, and that's really very important. The only other thing that I see in here is unfortunately, I think, kind of weak in terms of opening up the way that college appealed to folks from all over the place. There's on page 56, part D, comprehensive marketing, advertising, and public relations plan. But this says the owner is Jeff Hamilton, launches spring 2017. That's a whole year away, and there's no real guidance here on how that would work, right? So what would give me a lot more confidence that this plan was really going to help in the FTES in a major way, not just with the younger students, not just with the people who want a certificate, but really help in a major way, would it be to see something that has a wider expansion in terms of marketing. And one of the things I'm aware of, right, is that we have a lot of people who have moved into the city in the past few years who are between the ages of, say, 20 and 40. They've come here, they've moved into the city to live, they've come into jobs for the city, and they've never heard of City College. They've never heard of us, and they're still not hearing of us, right? They're really not hearing about us. And so something that would go in here that would really bring that out, I think, could be very important.
Thank you, Karen. I want to give other council members.
Yeah, and I just want to make 2 comments to that. The concerns that you've raised have been common among some of the feedback I've got. And I just want to remind ourselves, myself and others, that an enrollment management plan isn't a marketing plan. That they really are distinctly different plans that are seen at most colleges, which are meant to complement one another, but are not an integrated document. So you're absolutely correct that we did not prescriptively say, here are the marketing activities that should be done or put into the plan. But we did that intentionally because as the college is building its capacity for marketing and advertising and public relations, the hope is, like the facilities master plan, they will really delve into the depths of that based on their expertise, because we didn't have the marketing expertise in this particular plan. But I completely hear what you're saying, and I think we all share the goal that we want that to happen. The second comment I just want to make is that looking at the FTEF to FTES ratios in the past and the trending of that, there is no point in time at our college where we have pointed at something and said, that's the goal. The goal for productivity, and you saw it in Ron's presentation earlier today, is based on a statewide standard. So a statewide standard of 17.5 is a productivity rate, which means you have a average 35 class fill rate, is a statewide standard. It's not just a city college standard. So although I think we have been there in our past, we haven't pointed at that particular year that we were there or above that and said, well, that's the goal. So just to clarify that, that's really a broader kind of a broader measure that colleges use.
Can I comment real quick? So Karen, I just wanted to point you to page 19. Page 19 basically says, the theme is a little more around high school, but the point is that I looked at the distribution by age from 18 to 40-year-olds at City College, where high school they went to. And 65% of our 18-year-olds went to a San Francisco high school, 35% went elsewhere. If you basically do the line, what you realize is a huge percentage of our students basically did not go to a San Francisco high school. So what that means is that they're never going to see a lot of the outreach that's happening. And so there's some commentary in there about if we only relied on high school outreach, we would be doomed as a college. So that is in there, and I can make that language stronger. The other place that you want to look, Karen, is for ongoing existing outreach activities, is in section 7, plan for development and outreach for new programs. So what you'll see in there is a lot of the outreach that happens around general eds, around various programs. So lifelong learning sort of got the areas where lifelong learning people cluster, but if you looked at the general ed area, if you looked at the workforce development area, you can see there's a lot of outreach going towards broader audiences. It also mentions one of the programs I'm working on with Jesse with Interact, which is actually targeting working age adults, where we're doing a pilot looking at 2 programs, the marketing program and foreign language. We're actually doing a very, very targeted, change your career, make more money, blah, 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 what ambitious 24-year-olds want to hear, focused on 2 very target-rich zip codes to try to see, just basically starting to experiment with what's going to work. Now, you're right that there is a big gap and that the owner of the marketing plan is Jeff Hamilton, because he's not a marketer. They're hiring a marketer, but I can't put someday we will hire a marketer in there. I have to rely on Jeff Hamilton and Interact to do that. Now, yes, I understand that you're shaking your head, but I can't, there's not a whole lot more I can do until, if Jeff Hamilton is the owner, Jeff Hamilton is the owner. If Jeff Hamilton is the person who's managing the contract with Interact, then that's kind of where we're at.
I don't want to hog the floor, but there are a few more things I would like to say, but you can go to other people and come back.
So you okay? I want to get a few other people to chime in, and then we'll come back. Attila?
Yes, so just very quickly, this is the same area still, the City University. So I just wanted you to know that there already exists, and it's not an official outreach, but basically the SCIU try regularly recruit other city employees, and especially when there's low enrollment, there's like word goes out from the SCIU to different chapters that please take any courses to make sure to stay in the college. So it's not formalized, it's not organized like it's, but there's already a mentality, what I'm saying, among the city workers throughout the city, so that will help with that program.
Yeah, and we actually, the city, for those of you who don't know, the City University program allows any city employee to take courses and have their tuition reimbursed by the city. So basically they can come for free. We did an audit last fall. Less than 50 people took advantage of that program. So it's a huge opportunity for us, and that's why we wanted it specifically listed here, because we want to drive resources towards really expanding that.
I'm sorry, people are not aware. They do take the classes, but they are unaware, and that would be more helpful. So just thank you.
Yeah, and I'm glad to hear that there's participation there.
I'll make sure I'll give you guys props for that.
Others, before I go back to Karen?
Yeah, so that was my idea for a long time, and I always wondered why so few people participated. But I'm wondering if, it doesn't behoove the mayor to keep the program quiet because he doesn't want to reimburse 13,000. I don't know.
Too bad, Mayor.
I mean, I'm just wondering.
You know what? Too bad. You know what? Too bad, Mayor.
No, I got it, but I think
that we're going to market the heck out of it.
Okay, so I just want you to know, I worked for the city and county for the Department of Parking and Traffic for 10 years. Okay, so never got an announcement, never got anything on my paycheck, never got a newsletter, never got nothing. Okay, so but I wonder what it would mean for them to actually put that in on the paycheck that said, did you know you could go to City College for free?
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah.
So, I understand.
Actually, Karen, if you don't mind, so Jill, then we'll come back to you, Karen.
I want to reference
page 59 first. L, compressed calendar, and M, distance education. I think are really interesting. And yeah, 59. L and M.
It's on 61.
59. I thought it was really interesting, especially when Karen mentioned the changing demographics of San Francisco. That I think a compressed calendar and distance education would appeal to those groups. Additionally, I'm wondering about distance education because because we don't have to provide the brick and mortar. That it could be, I don't know how to phrase this, like more of a, we get more bang for our buck because we're not having to mop any floors or keep lights on or things like that. But anyways, so yeah. So I just wanted to highlight those. On page 60, it's probably already been noted under P. Because my copy of P says campus maintenance and security standards evaluate student food services for eating, such as a little typo. Thank you.
You don't get your dollar. I pay $1 for typos. First find them, here I'd go for it.
Other council members before going to Karen? Going back to Karen? Okay, Karen.
Thanks very much for humoring me. So, in terms of the appearance that you're really not interested in the other age groups, the top of page 7 in my copies, where it says targeted benchmarks, it says for CCSF to achieve its growth targets, assuming no dramatic changes in the state budget, accreditation status, or unemployment rate, the focus must be on targeted students who are not as sensitive to unemployment rate, such as high school graduates from San Francisco Unified School District, as well as lifelong learners, right? And then when you refer to lifelong learners elsewhere in the document, you also often tend to, I think really quite inappropriately mention, and these people could also be targeted for fundraising activities. And it makes it look as if you have in mind, society dames who are taking an art appreciation class, and along the line we could also ask them to join a foundation. I mean, this is how it communicates from this. And I know that's not what you meant, but that is definitely how it comes across.
Yeah, and I did clarify that section after your comments yesterday about the fact that we need to find broader groups, but I think the one issue was, we do have a lot of groups that are going to be very sensitive to the unemployment rate, but we are going to have some that are less sensitive and could be more of a basics. That was my point. But I did clarify and talk about working adults and broader populations than just San Francisco Unified.
So having heard now that the productivity number is actually is based on the statewide thing, I really think that there needs to be some feasibility put into how we would achieve that. And I know that something's been brought to your attention at all, and it's not mentioned anywhere in this document that I can see. It has to do with classroom size, right? We do have larger classrooms in this building. There are the distance learning, although in fact the contact requirements of distance learning are pretty intense, so that you really cannot have a teacher who's doing distance learning and have 120 people in the class, whereas you can have a large chemistry class with 120 people, although we now have some problems with large chemistry classes as well. So it needs to be some feasibility of how you're going to achieve that, given the facilities we have and given the other issues. And I think looking at the historical information could help understand what would it take to do that. I don't see anything in here that explains what would be necessary to get that.
Yeah, and it's certainly, it's a complicated issue. Like you said earlier, if part of our historical FTES has been in categories of curriculum that are no longer available to us, then restoring those is not an option. We have to restore in a different way, or we have to acknowledge that we can't restore those FTES. Class size, classroom sizes definitely has a place in that conversation. I think you're absolutely right. Because if our capacity within certain areas of the curriculum is lower than a particular benchmark, then we need to adjust our budget and plan for that, right, over the long haul. So I think those are really good points. I do think those are things we are going to continue to talk about. And as we develop more institutional awareness and solicit broader participation in some of these conversations, I'm hopeful that we will then build momentum on some of these issues and really come to some consensus on what do we expect.
Can I just jump in real quick too? So just section A actually talks a lot about room, brings up the issue of room utilization, which is one of the issues around growth and making sure we actually have the right rooms and the right facilities to address the room needs. So it's probably not as clear as it should be. I can certainly pull that out, but yeah, that was something that we were starting to think about. And that was one of the things that we were aware of when we were thinking about benchmarks and growth and so on. But yeah, it's there. It's kind of there. It needs to be more clear.
Do you have other questions?
Just two more things, and then I will be quiet.
No, don't be quiet.
I had asked.
So Karen, I'm sorry, I see Alan's hand, and I see Jill want to chime in as well. So do you mind if we lead back to you again, Karen, or?
I would like to finish, but it's okay.
Okay, go ahead. I just want to acknowledge that there are others.
If you're related, go ahead, Karen. I'll defer.
The reason I had asked about this as a foundation for the marketing plan is when I've been asking about a marketing plan a year ago, I've been told that we didn't have an enrollment management plan first. So that's why that the big marketing plan, the people who I thought would write a marketing plan said, oh no, we can't do that until there's an enrollment management plan. So that's why I expected there to be some basis in here that would drive the marketing plan. Well, one more thing, and then I really will shut up. And that is that I would like to see a sort of footprint in here that would help to support the Free City piece that's going. That is a huge opportunity for the college. Right. And I would like to see things that are sort of poised to take advantage of that when it happens.
Right, we did talk about that, but as you know, as a governmental agency, we can't take a stand on a political issue. And so even though the committee fully agreed, we all support it, we all want to take advantage of it, we need to be planning, we decided to not memorialize that because we're really prohibited from doing that in our roles as employees. We can do it outside of our role as employee, but we were cautious about that. But everybody agreed. It certainly is something we want to pursue aggressively and support.
So I was going to speak to the Free City component specifically, and I mean, while I can appreciate the dividing line that does not allow us to participate in the political campaign for that, we might want to be putting in place the methodologies that would be required to enforce any of the policies that could come out of that. And of course, we still don't know how it will look at the very end. but we can anticipate some of those things, and I'm wondering what we are doing in that capacity.
Well, there's another recommendation here that talks about reviewing our policies for admissions and matriculation. So that could be a part of that conversation as we're reviewing those policies. What would it take? I think those are appropriate questions to answer. So I hope that we'll get it into the fold. We just didn't call it out specifically, but certainly we're committed to that. And I know Samuel, as the VC of Student Development, is really aware of that, and his group would play a key role in that.
I'm wondering, in that role, is it student advocacy and college advocacy in the whatever limited way we can do that is going to be, I don't know, it's based on that. And that's how our success is going to be for this free city is going to be student driven primarily. And so student participation, although we don't have any here today, is going to be important. And I don't know what Samuel's office and your office.
Let me follow up with him and see if I can get him to kind of help us with the response on that. Okay. It's a good point.
I would invite Jill first, and then Miriam.
So I had 3 things really quickly. Since the Free City thing came up, I'm not going to talk about it here, but I am a citizen of San Francisco, so during my free time, I'm going to utilize my freedom as a citizen, and I would suggest everyone else do when they're not part of a government agency, when they're off work. And the second thing is, this is really large and complex and exciting and scary and all of that, and I really appreciate all the council members' dialogue, their questions, and their commentary, because it's helping me get my head around this large, complex, exciting, scary thing. And then my third comes from being a former student, and I'm not sure I really understand about the utilizing the classroom facilities that are large to have larger enrollment, and just my experience of being a student, when I went to San Francisco State and took a Psychology 1 class with 350 other students in the class, it was kind of a bummer. And then I went to my local community college and took the same class with about 45 students, and it was a significantly improved educational experience for me. So I just wanted to briefly put that out there. I'm going to look at enrollment management because I'm not really sure I understand that we're attempting to utilize our larger facilities or make facilities, classroom facilities larger, or also I don't even remotely understand whether it would be more expensive just to, do you have one big, large section of something, or would it be better to have like 2 or 3 sections? So I don't need that answered right now. There's just interesting things for me to think about. So thank you.
Okay. Can I comment? So actually, we do mention at number 5, strategic advantage. If you flip over to, I think everybody's paging is different, but if you go to page 21, and we talk about some of the benefits and why people come to City College and what our selling points are. Number 1 is class sizes are smaller than typical four-year public universities, providing more personal learning support. So that is a very essential part of what we do, and we're not going to let that go. It's there, because it's in the plan.
I just wanted to do a quick time check. It's 5:20. We do have a few more items to cover. And I, again, recognize that the retirement party is taking place now. Is the council okay with stopping here with regard to the enrollment management plan? We are coming back, it is coming back for a second reading next 2 weeks. I just want to get a sense of the council's wishes. That's it.
I have to leave really soon because the SCI is going to talk about the postal tax tonight, and I think when I leave, we're going the state and the citywide, and I think we're going to lose quorum.
Yes,
so I don't know if
there's nothing that will require quorum.
And I think Jill will do.
So I recognize that. So again, the remaining items do not require quorum. I just want to make sure that we wrap it up.
And folks have been emailing me, and folks who are on campus have been finding this and emailing me, so if people just want to email me with comments or clarifications or what in the world were you talking about or whatever, please feel free to do so. I'm keeping track of them all. I'm making changes as they go, and I do look forward to seeing people's comments. I mean, this is our plan, right? This is everybody's plan, and if people don't feel bought into it, then it doesn't exist, so. Okay.
So this is with the council. I'd like to thank Carol and Anna. We will again bring them back this topic for a second reading in 2 weeks. Thank you. All right, we're going to move to planning committee report, accreditation. Lillian's not here and Kristen's not here, so we'll skip that. Diversity, there is no report, so we need. This means that Pam can come back for the other update information right before we talk about the internal work group survey.
Okay, so So just very briefly, the Planning Committee had its last meeting of the semester on Monday, and pull up the update. You'll see in the update there is an item that the Planning Committee discussed, that the Academic Senate had discussed prior to the Planning Committee, that is a fairly momentous item, and that is the splitting off of program review, comprehensive program review from annual planning. So instead of all units at the college doing the entire comprehensive program review every single year, the Academic Senate has recommended, and this is a 10+1 item clearly, the Academic Senate has recommended a 3-year cycle with comprehensive program review in the first year, an annual plan in the second year, another annual plan in the third year, and then back to comprehensive program review. The Planning Committee took this up on Monday for all the non-10+1 areas, so all the other units of the college that are also going through program review on the same cycle, and we're all in complete agreement.
I bet. I'm sorry, I'm just sort of jumping up and down in my shoes here. Okay. No one,
right.
no one is upset with that decision. I really want to do that whole thing.
So far, nobody has. So far, you know, if you want to like really stand out from the crowd, you could protest. But so far, nobody has protested. So you'll see in the Planning Committee update what went to the Academic Senate, and just very briefly, the last comprehensive program review was done in fall of 15. So fall of 16, we would start with the annual plan. Fall of 17 would be an annual plan, and the next comprehensive program review, which would be the annual plan plus all the program review components, would be fall of 18. So that's the schedule proposed, and you see that in the Academic Senate proposal. And if you want, this is going to go through a little more sort of refinement, but Catherine Weiss helped put this together, and I think this is a really, really good snapshot. Shows what the annual plan components would be, and then the program review. So, for example, the data analysis, which I know is something that people wrestle with. You wouldn't have to do that every year. But curriculum currency, which is important for CTE departments, that would be done every year. So you'll see here what the divvying up is. So there, yeah.
Sorry, you could finish off my question.
Go ahead. Okay.
So, I'm just curious about what part about this change. It makes complete sense to me. Yeah, but it just seems like a really big change. I just feel like every year people are just like always have a report due, always have the data, not always on the go. So
right,
to kind of take things and.
So this has been in discussion for a long time, actually, and if you go back and look at the program review timeline, there was, I want to say it was in 2011, We had a moment where we tried to go to every 2 years, and it didn't quite happen. And I think part of it has been feeling like the institution has enough of a grip on what it's doing in the connection between program review and planning and whatnot, that we have enough to show that we feel comfortable from an accreditation standpoint of going to this 3-year, 1-year cycle, which frankly is a more normal, more typical cycle of most colleges. And so this has been an idea that I think it was really never a question of if, it was more a question of when, and it seems like people feel comfortable that now is the time.
It just seems like...
Which is a testament to how much work everybody has
Yeah.
done, that there's that level of comfort that, you know, we've gotten far enough along, we have enough to show that if we go to this cycle, it's not like, oh, when we go to comprehensive program review, we'll be starting all over again, and you know, we'll have lost that history. There's a sense of continuity, there's a sense of the cycle, there's a sense of the connection to budget, which will continue in the annual plan. And I should say that the Academic Senate's Program Review Committee really spent a lot of time. They met every other week just on this item, and really did a lot of work, and I was able to attend probably more than half of those meetings.
Just one question. The 3 years, is it staggered, or the whole college does it?
It's the whole college. Yeah.
I think that's actually easier.
Yeah. So there was a lot of discussion around this a staggered approach versus. So one of the things that people really liked about the annual program review is that yes, everybody was going through it. There were discussions. So rather than losing that, we want to keep that and say everybody's going through program review in X year, but it's just not every year. It's every 3 years.
Other questions, comments? Again, this is important for the council to know, and again, I think there's great, consensus that this is a great idea. So thank you.
So I think it may need a formal recommendation.
From us.
Yeah. So in which case, I won't be here in 2 weeks.
Okay. So.
Okay.
So if we do need to do the recommendation, there will need to be in 2 weeks.
We don't have quorum.
Well, and we don't have quorum today, but we need to do it in 2 weeks.
Right, and someone else will be there in your stead.
Right. But y'all promise me you won't change your minds between now and then.
Well, we'll text you while you're on the beach in La Paz.
So thank you. We will bring this back in 2 weeks for more recommendations.
All right.
This institutional one.
Okay, and then very, very briefly, again, because I won't be here in 2 weeks, I'm just going to be out that day. Education Master Plan. We do work on a status report every year. So last May we reported where we were with implementation. We're working on that now. It's about 90% of the way there. So if you go to ccsf.edu/EMP, you'll see this is the implementation matrix from year 1 that was presented actually in May of 2015, and there were a few late additions that made it to the August 2015. And so we now have May 2016, and I invite folks to click on that link, take a look. If you have questions, let me know. I won't be able to make a formal presentation to this group, but we will be making a formal presentation to the board probably in June, and I would be happy to circulate the presentation to this group so that folks can at least have it. It is an information item, but I do think it's important for this group to know that it's happening.
Thank you, Ken. Other questions, comments? Okay. Thank you very much. We'll miss you in 2 weeks, but somebody will be in your spot.
I'll miss you all.
Okay, this brings us to the last item. So, Chief.
Yeah, I only need 2 minutes of my 20 minutes. Just briefly here, our work group convened for the purpose of looking at our annual survey that we need to go out about PGC.
And Chief, who were in attendance?
And those members in attendance was myself, and worked in partnership with Pam, she was there, Mike Solo from Academic, and Jill Kersey. We begged for student participation, and unfortunately this never happened. We really tried on multiple fronts. So that was the group. And basically our charge was really just to take a look at the instrument that we were using and if there needed to be any change. And what we did is we based that, the documents that I kind of passed out to you, is we looked at the summary that was put together on our past evaluation. We kind of looked at our progress, and it appeared that we were doing real well in our progress. Some things need to continue to be ongoing, and others we need to clean up a little bit. So there's some minor things, but it didn't affect the questions that we were going to ask. So the questions that we have pretty much are staying intact, except for we're going to clean up for the internal evaluation, clean up question 1 and 2, which we're going to clean the language from operational guidelines to notate the BP and AP. So that's what we really refer to now. So it's going to be codified. And of course, we're still working on that. But that, once we're finished, those will be our guidelines. So we're going to speak to that instead of operations. So we're changing the language there. And then we did get rid of the question for the external, and we didn't ask that for this group necessarily, but we wanted to see about rotating location, and based on the feedback, about 65 to 70% were fine with hosting it here, or they didn't care one way or the other. That was a large body, and a small percentage that said, sure, we could rotate it. So based on the fact, we felt that because it's logistically challenging to do that we would eliminate that question. But we certainly could, if we ever wanted to move to another location, could do so if we felt the need to, but we didn't see that as we would keep that question there based on that. Because we wouldn't necessarily move to do that.
Well, and also, it would seem to me, if we have new technology and smart this and smart that and cameras all over the place, we could have an audience from another campus still,
Yes.
you know, chiming in.
Yes.
Absolutely. So yeah,
Right.
so just minor changes, and so the plan is to put this out beginning Monday, so that we can get the information back before everybody runs out of here by the end of May. So it'll be out for a couple of weeks, and we'll keep our timeline of May, so that we, since this is our last, will be our last meeting, and we can see what kind of feedback we get. So the last part of my presentation then is just encouraging, all the constituent groups to certainly tell their folks to take the survey. So we want to make sure that we capture as many folks as we can.
If we had quorum, I'd be making a motion to approve these items.
Exactly.
Oh, it's here.
And so, great. All right. That's it.
Questions for Chief, comments? So thank you, Chief, for taking on this.
Thanks for everybody that got somebody in.
Okay. All right, no public comments. The meeting is adjourned at 5:35. Thank you very much.